Hi, today I actually want to show you a workflow automation that we did using agents for a really big consulting company. Think of them as they have a corporate fund. They want to send out information to startups to fill information and keep track of what's going on with them, make sure that data's happening consistently, educate or tell everybody in terms of the internal stakeholders that, hey, these are the startups to look out for. So the current flow is, let's say there's a startup list that they've come together. Let's say there's one startup that they want to feature and put out as a newsletter internally. What they end up doing is they ask the startup to fill out information on a Google Doc. And then once the information is filled out, they usually give it to an agency. The agency takes that content and makes sure it's converted to an HTML format, spruces it up, makes it pretty, and also sometimes gives it in an Outlook format. Now that information is taken by the company and then it's copied and sent it as a newsletter internally to everybody else. Now, some of the challenges that end up happening here is you have to constantly follow up with startups to fill that information out. There's a lot of dependency on the agency because it's like, okay, I want this format, but it takes time. The agency's like, yeah, I can give it to you in like a week, but you know that it can get done quickly. So what we essentially did in terms of implementation is, imagine you have a startup, you automate the reach out to the startup, which is the outreach agent. Once it's reached out, you have a chat-like setup where the startup fills information out based on the chat asking specific questions. Because what's happening now is most people give it a form, you're like, oh my God, we're waiting for a form. So the startup fills out that data, and once that data is filled out, that information is passed on to Startup of the Week newsletter create agent, which creates or expands the specific information into a newsletter format and then converts it into a PDF document, into an HTML template, as well as an OFT file. The OFT file is your Outlook format. And I think the beauty of this is now one of the wins is potentially like, hey, you can do this in-house. You don't need resources dedicated from a follow-up standpoint, right? So those things are pretty huge. So any form of repetitive task that you want to automate in terms of workflow, agents are the way to go. And now it comes down to what agents do you use and what tooling mix do you use in each part of the workflow. Okay, so definitely reach out to us if you're looking for any form of automation or workflows. Here's an example of what we're doing in terms of content creation as well as reach out automation. Thank you.
Build safe and responsible agents. Introducing Lyzr.